never rests.
Counting colors in the sky. What a thrilling time to be alive.
Thursday morning. 2 Jakes, 2 hoodies, 2 hats. Big day. Georgia show with you today. Kicking off the day, and an interesting week here in the world of Georgia football in terms of what's going on in the transfer portal. A lot of activity, both coming in and going out. And we will get to all of that today and kind of analyze the goings on as we see them. What does it all mean? That's a good question, I think, in terms of where Georgia's spending its efforts and very likely spending its money. Jake Roos and Jake Rowe joining you today. And Jake, you got your coffee in hand. You got your hair in a ponytail. Not yet, but soon. And but it has. It's been a busy week so far, Jake. And today is a big day too for Georgia. Mid-year enrollees coming in as well. So a lot of activity popping off for these dogs.
Yeah, I'm looking at you over here. You like you're getting ready to tell ghost stories.
This light's not doing me a lot of favors today. It's washing me out a little bit.
There was a house on a hill. There's so much going on right now. It's going to be – Rusty's got a piece up over at DawgsHQ right now that – listen, I don't like the whole idea of like teasing what we've got on our site to our YouTube crowd and our podcast crowd and everything. I really don't. Like, I mean, we have more people who listen to us here than our members of the site, and I get that. But Rusty's got a piece over there, kind of an in-depth piece on why today is so busy. They've got a ton of their mid-year class that is arriving to campus today. They've got a couple official visitors, one in the 2026 class, so that the recruiting class is not finished.
Yeah.
And then also a transfer portal guy at a position that we haven't spent as much time talking about. So get over there and check that out. But it's really, really busy behind the scenes over at Georgia right now. I mean, it really is. And I get that everybody's kind of disappointed with the fact that you're not playing football tonight. You know, you don't have a game to watch tonight. I get that.
I'll be honest, I forgot there was football tonight, to be honest,
Yeah,
as a result.
Yeah, I'm excited about watching it and kind of seeing what's going on. I don't know what time the first game kicks off. We're going to predict those games later, so be thinking about it.
Thursday is kind of would you agree with me, though, that Thursday feels like a goofy day to do this?
Sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Saturdays need to belong to college football. Get this
Agreed. Or even a Friday. I could even see a Friday night for these playoff games.
Yeah, I guess once high school season's over.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I don't know. I just think Saturday should be college football's day.
I'm with you 100%.
You figure the calendar out, and Saturday belongs to college football until it's done. Just like Friday night should belong to high school football until it's done.
Agreed.
And yeah, we got games tonight, and I know everybody's disappointed that Georgia's not playing tonight. But listen, man, let's just start here. And this wasn't really the original starting point. I look at Georgia's football team next year, and I see them bringing back so much more than they brought from 2024 to 2025. I see a rising tide type situation. You get better. Gunner gets a little better. The defense gets better. The offense, gets better. You get better special teams just by proxy of everybody getting older and more experienced. And I just think Georgia's going to have a really good football team next year. And honestly, I feel it would have been great to see Georgia go on a run this year, go to the national championship game to win the whole thing. Like, I get that. But when talking about 2026, Georgia wins the national championship this past year. I'm a little concerned about Georgia's ability to handle expectations going into next year with so many people coming back. Losing the way they did, manageable schedule, I feel I'm just excited about next season. And I know you got to get over that first round hump, not first round hump, but that first game hump, there in the quarterfinals. I know you got to get over that. I get it. But I still still so bullish on next year's team, and it's going to be really highly rated, and a very good chance that there's a significant number of the media in this conference that pick Georgia to win the SEC next year. And I think that right now, to bring it full circle, what Georgia's doing in the transfer portal to kind of improve this football team is a big part of it.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that it's very clear, and we talked about this in the pre-show, that they have some key things identified that they want to be focused on in this transfer portal cycle. And really, I would say, Jake, to a large degree, it's not maybe dissimilar from what we've seen in the past. It seems like they want to – there are certain positions that Georgia seems to value very highly in the transfer portal under Kirby Smart. I would say certainly one of those is wide receiver. A proven guy there is huge, right? I think we've started to hear a little bit of rumbling about running back, and not just a ton of names out there, but a specific name that's on the table. There are certain positions that I feel like Georgia feels they can immediately improve upon and kind of batten down the hatches for next year with what they have. You're supplementing at this point, and that's actually, I think, a pretty cool place to be in, right? Because you're not trying to build from ground up here. You're able to kind of pick and choose what may improve you immediately.
You know, there was a time, and it was probably a year ago, 2 years ago, and beyond, where when you brought up the fact that, hey, Georgia didn't get so-and-so in this recruiting class, they're going to have to go to the transfer portal, everybody was dead certain you couldn't build a team in the transfer portal. Like, that's not the way anybody wanted to build a team. Listen, for this year, that team, those 4 teams left in it, leaned heavily on the transfer portal.
Sure.
So I still think high school recruiting and a balance between the two is what's going to make you a sustained threat in today's college football. But I think we've moved past the point of the transfer portal's taboo in a sense, you know, or going heavy into the transfer portal's taboo. You got to do it. You've got to do it because you're losing guys to it, but you've got to do it because it's proven to be successful. And I still don't think like the breakdown of your roster construction is the most important thing when it comes to the playoff. The most important thing when it comes to playoff is being hot and healthy at the right time.
Sure.
You know, that's the key.
Yeah, one of the things we had this debate yesterday on the board over at DawgsHQ, and the question became, what's sort of the marker of success for next year? What are your expectations? And I think that while I would never fault anybody who says, you know, we got to win it all, right? I mean, that's clearly the expectation that fans have. That's clearly the expectation I think Kirby Smart has for this team, right? I mean, that's what they want. To me, the playoff is a reset. The playoff begins a whole new season. We're talking about a completely different thing at that point. And I liken it to the World Series of Poker. And it's like, you got to just stay around the final table, you know? And that's what skill is in the world of poker. If you look around the table and you see the same guys, those guys are pretty good poker players. Georgia was at the final table again this year, which is the playoff. And so you mentioned, you know, the 4 teams remaining and their reliance on the portal. I continue to think that this is an imperfect system that nobody has necessarily nailed yet. You've got 2 teams that return to that are in this round that were in the playoff last year. You got 2 teams that weren't. And I believe it was a quarter of the teams in total that made the 12 team weren't in it last year. So, you know, you would think that if somebody had the recipe figured out, that they would be a shoo-in. Meanwhile, Indiana was out in the first round last year. Oregon, I think, lost in this round.
They lost in the round that Georgia did. They lost
the round that Georgia did. Okay, all right. I couldn't remember if they had the bye or not.
They did have the bye.
They did have the bye, and then they lost. That's right. They're the one who managed to break the curse, but also fell victim to the curse last year. So
they didn't break the curse this year. Indiana did.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm myopic when
You're
it
on
comes to
drugs.
this. All I know is Georgia.
Quit with
I
that.
make
Hey,
no
I told
bones.
you about those narcotics. Quit with
I make no bones about it. I follow one team. I don't get paid to follow Oregon around. Um, so, but no, it's very clear to me. I think that the imperfect system continues. And look, I don't doubt for a second Kirby Smart's on the outside looking in and saying, look, these are the things that we need to do. And I think that we're seeing that, Jake, based on the things that we're seeing Georgia do in this transfer portal cycle in terms of the positions that they seem to be prioritizing. You see pass rusher in there. You see defensive line is always going to be a thought. Offensive line. Those are – I don't think that has anything specifically to do with the 2026 season. I think that those are expectations you can have for Georgia year in and year out when it comes to the portal. And that's not just Georgia. That's everybody. If you can find an offensive lineman that can help you, you're going to take him. Same thing on the defensive line. A proven wide receiver is a commodity, right? These are the kind of positions that they seem to be focused on right now. And I think that will continue to be the trend going forward.
And here's the deal too. It's when you have a roster kind of like Georgia has that, it's no longer far and away the best in college football, right? Like, I mean, it's one of the best ones in college football, but it's no longer like the lead dog by several lengths.
Sure.
You're never really desperate to land a guy at a certain position. Like Georgia's not desperate for a running back. They've got their top two rushers coming back as of right now. God knows when the portal could take that away. I don't expect it, but you never know. They've got a really good group of young receivers that they don't want to block off.
Right.
So, and that they're paying, right? Like they're paying, they had to pay Talon Taylor, they had to pay CJ Wiley to get them in the fold. They've got a really good group of pass rushers and outside backers that they signed this last year, in 2025, like Isaiah Gibson and Darren Ikenabon, Chase Linton, that they want to keep around and keep developing. So they're never like and I tie this back to Hollywood Smothers, right? Like the running back from what a name from NC State, Alabama Gitson. Well, Alabama doesn't return a rusher with more than 300 yards rushing on the year. They need a guy. Like, they've got to have a guy. And I don't want to call Alabama desperate, but they need it way more than Georgia does. Yeah. So when it comes to the funds that they'll allocate and the opportunity to play, you're competing against teams that are like that. And so there's this whole notion that Georgia only shops in the bargain bin when it comes to the transfer portal. And I don't think that's accurate. They're not shopping in the bargain bin. They're just not in a position where they've got to go all out or it makes any sense to really go all out and overpay or spend with somebody else who has to have that guy. Like they've got to. Or
risk upsetting the apple cart, right? I mean,
I'm less and less on that. That's certainly the case. I mean, the thing about it is if you go out and you spend $2 million or $1.5 million on adding a piece, then you could very well have 2 or 3 guys on your own football team decide to enter the portal at that point. Some of these schools, I'm noticing it, and I don't want to shout anybody out because I don't really want to. I don't want the smoke, right? I don't want everybody coming at me. But you see these schools that'll pay big money to get a recruit, and then he's in the portal the very next year when they go in the portal and get somebody else, right? And to me, that's just taking all those hundreds, breaking them down into ones, and going and finding a stiff wind and throwing them straight up in the air and just watching it blow away. And that's something you got to consider. And that's why I think that this whole portal thing, this whole roster building thing, it's going to be like amateur golf. Like some people you're going to have seasons where you've got it. Like you've got it. And then there are going to be seasons where you don't. And I don't think anybody's ever going to figure it out. It's going to be a different recipe every single year.
Well, and I think too, we talk about this idea of the teams that are in it and their reliance on the portal. Okay. And that's true. I think that there's definitely truth to that. The question becomes though, are you built? I guess it's about what you value. Do you want to make the 1 year run and go all in and go try and win the championship? Or do you want to create a sustained situation, right? Rather and sort of, like you said, build through the high school recruiting, supplement with the portal, and kind of ensure that you kind of keep yourself in the conversation for the long term. I mean, if I'm looking at it, Jake, Miami comes to mind, right? Miami is going to need a lot of help next year in terms of trying to get back to even this position, I think, because they have really gone all in on several spots, and they're losing several key players that are going to be hard to replace, even if you had the money, because there's just not a lot of guys like this out there in the world.
Yeah. Well, I look at it like this too. I mean, kudos to Miami for winning playoff games. That's big. I mean, you went to Texas A&M, you beat Ohio State. You've earned where you're at.
No question.
Doubt. But let me ask you this. Anybody trading spots with Miami in November where they're fingers crossed praying that they're going to get in the playoff and they missed it last year? Or
if you're a Georgia fan, are you trading spots with them moving into 26?
Probably not. And I'll look at it like this too. Ohio State loses in the first round this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they lose their first game, just like Georgia.
Right.
On the outside, it appeared they spent a lot less money than they did the year before. But at the same time, they had a much more stress-free look and getting into the playoffs. Some of that had to do with schedule than they did last year when they got in as the number 8 seed. And it never really in doubt that they were going to get in. But again, would Ohio State fans, have traded places with last year's team come November? Probably not. Like that team felt more under control and it's different. It's just different and that's what makes me think it's going to be different every year. Like it's been the same for Georgia, right? And everybody's like, well, do something different because this ain't working. But you've seen these teams that are spending big or spend less, pull back. Ole Miss is a great example. Ole Miss spent through the nose last year.
Yep.
I mean, Walter Nolan and they had a lot of money tied up into Jackson Dart and they had all of that stuff going on there. They were much better defensively. They were dominant defensively. They lost 3 ball games last year. This year they go 11-1, stress-free, floating to the playoffs. Now they're in the Final Four.
Stress-free in some senses.
Right.
Not in the sense of their roster construction, I will say.
Not in that sense, but has nothing to do with how much they're spending on.
No, agreed.
Yeah, or spending on transfer portal guys or their roster building strategy. That was all kind of there's a lot of layers to this thing, and that layer was rotten there at the end of the season with the Lane Kiffin stuff. But it's just, man, you just kind of got to plug ahead. You got to plug ahead, develop your players, get them playing their best ball, get the guys on your roster to improve from year to year, and just keep grinding. And I know nobody wants to hear that. It's boring, just like it's boring when people, I'll run into people and they're like, hey, man, watch a show. What do you think about the game on Saturday? And I'd give the most boring answer every time. Do they play well?
Yeah.
If Georgia plays well, if Georgia goes out there and plays its best game, very few teams can do much about it.
Right.
But Georgia went out there in the Sugar Bowl and played like crap. They got a break they weren't fortunate. They forced a fumble, picked it up, ran it back for a touchdown. They got a break, one of those that you rarely lose a game on. I mean, you hit a fake punt in the game and get a fumble, scoop and score for a touchdown. You don't lose those games 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100. But Georgia played so poorly. Georgia coached so poorly to me in that game that they lost it. They lost by 3, lost 2 games, or lost by 5, lost 2 games by 8 points this year, beat everybody they played, and they've got nothing to show for it because in the biggest game of the year, they didn't coach their best. They didn't play their best.
A good piece here from Josh Armstrong, a loyal listener and a subscriber to the YouTube channel. Appreciate you, Josh. He says the biggest domino for UGA in the coming days is Freeling. If he goes to the NFL, then the staff has to get into turbo mode and tamper or get the best available starting left tackle.
You know, I've got to comment on that. I don't think Georgia has to tamper, because here's why. You look at the University of Georgia, a high-profile program, has a big offer on the table to Monroe Freeling. There's no doubt in my mind. A substantial offer to Monroe Freeling. Well, at that point, you just, make a conference call to every agent that's that represents an offensive tackle, and you just say, "Hey, we had a tackle go pro. We've got a lot of money to spend, and we got a lot of snaps to offer. Go do work." Let the word travel. Tell everybody and that's it. They don't have to start tampering for specific guys, and then at that point, the guys are going to start hopping in and looking for the opportunity to do it, and Georgia's going to have the money to pay. I'm not super worried. I mean, I think Georgia would be absolutely best served if Monroe Freeling came back, but I'm not concerned that if he leaves, that Georgia's going to be in panic mode. I think that in a lot of ways they're going to be a pretty magnetic draw for a lot of offensive tackles out there that are in the portal and some that aren't.
I think, that's the thing, right? Is I think the concern that's in the minds of many people, and I can understand this certainly, is whenever that domino falls, is it soon enough for you to get in on some of these guys that that may have made earlier moves? That's where the concern is.
And I agree with Rusty on this. I think that Georgia is going to know one way or the other before the end of the weekend, before the start of next week, when there's several days, left to kind of make those moves. I think Georgia's going to know. And also, if you're not a member at DawgsHQ, you may not know the fact that Georgia's actually hosting an offensive tackle on campus today. So come on over and check that out. They've got a very experienced left tackle on campus today.
Sip that tea, Jake.
A guy that has, believe it or not, over 1,400 career snaps playing left tackle.
There you go. And at a high level as well. He's faced some real good competition. In fact, some familiar to Georgia competition. But that's kind of an interesting emergence, right? We haven't heard a ton about that. Carius Kern was the other guy that we'd probably been hearing the most about when it came to the offensive line. Obviously, I thought he kind of gave Lane Kiffin a little parting shot there by heading to Ole Miss. Kind of threw a finger up as he drove over the bridge and burned it. Yeah. But he
and prisoner of the moment, which is, something you could use to describe the personality of most college football fans. God, I love it.
I thought it was great. I did too.
I do too. It's so fun. I hope it never changes. And I'm not like criticizing anybody by saying this. Like, I mean, it's an in the moment sport. It's one of the things that makes it so great in this whole world we live in, where we just kind of look at our phones and block everything out. When you watch college football, you are in the moment. Live sports in the moment, right? Prisoner of the moment, you probably got some Ole Miss fans out there who were, mid-season, like, we can't lose Lane, that are like, yeah, we'll take that trade. We'll take Carius Kern for Lane Kiffin. Hey, listen, nobody makes chicken salad out of chicken fecal matter better than college football fans do.
Well, and I said too, we were discussing this on the board the other day. To me, what the transfer portal has done is it's taken the long draw of recruiting, right? As you and I came up in the business and we had to interview these guys starting in 9th grade, and where do you love, and where does mom love, and where are you visiting? And it's condensed it down to 2 weeks. They took recruiting and they turned it into crack. And they were like, it's an immediate hit. You've got 2 weeks to figure this out. There's no dilly dallying around. There's no feel good stories. It's who can come in, who can help me right away, and let's get this deal done and let's get out the door.
Recruiting was cocaine, and
they figured out how to add the baking soda. That's what happened.
Turned it into a crack rock is what they did. Yeah, that's 100%. That's really good. That's fantastic, and they did. They did in a lot of ways. It's funny. I saw over on the Dog Walk, our message board forum. somebody said like, "Hey, does anybody get more enjoyment out of the portal than they do recruiting now?" And you know, I'm sure that's what was getting said in the alleyways back in the
80s. This was good. This is better. No, Megan here with an interesting.
We do not condone the use of illicit drugs.
An interesting question here for you, Jay Grow. I'm going to put this one to you. Megan says, "Is there no one on the roster right now that we can trust at the left tackle spot next year? Let's assume Monroe Freeling's gone, and you know you're looking around in the portal. Certainly, you're going to be looking for help. But if they had to turn internally, who's that guy in your mind?"
Rusty Mansell's got eligibility left. A little light in the pants. He's lost a lot of weight. So I don't know that I don't know that the punch is still there. But you know, Rusty, no, I would say Juan Gaston would probably get a look. I know he worked at left tackle, you know, this offseason, this preseason. You know, I would say that they would probably try to get Juan Gaston there. He'd need to drop some weight. He'd need to get down to about 330. And I think they'd feel pretty good about it. You know, Ernest Green has played that spot, but I still think he's a better fit and better player at right tackle than he is at left tackle, although he played left tackle at a really high level for the vast majority of the 2023 season. He gave up 1 sack all season long, or maybe it was 2 all season long in his first season playing left tackle, and then, you know, struggled with injuries in 2024. Did it again in 2025, and then, you know, ultimately ended up playing a pretty good right tackle spot there at the end of the year. But I would, you know, I don't think Akane Igboko would be quite ready as a true freshman. Georgia's going to go to the portal, though. They're going to go to the portal. I think they would feel a lot better at left tackle using Juan Gaston as depth as opposed to him being the guy. But I do think Juan Gaston can play that spot at a high level.
It'd be interesting to see that, and then do you at that point maybe look to a guy like Igboko or I mean, they've got a lot of guys that they've kind of taken flyers. I mean, Bo Hughley's obviously transferring now, but you know they've got a lot of guys that you've sort of been waiting. Jamal Merriweather was one at one point, and Josh Jackson was a guy that they were talking.
Would Georgia peel off some money to grab Bo Hughley back out of the portal?
Sure.
If Monroe Freeling left.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like we haven't seen that before. I remember Robert Beal went into the portal and came back to Georgia.
That's right. Sure.
mean, they've had guys do that before. So,
Tristan Miller.
Well,
sort of.
Announced intentions to enter 24 hours later.
He never filed the paperwork.
Yeah, never filed the paperwork. Never took a screenshot of his paperwork and sent it to the what you got to do now. But yeah, I don't know. That one's, you know, I think Juan Gaston would be kind of where the staff turned.
Sure.
You know, there, but you know, I'm still feeling if Georgia can get. I feel excellent about Georgia's offensive line next year if Freeling and Ernest Green come back to go with Dontrell Glover. You get Drew Bobo healthy. You got Juan Gaston to probably jump in there at right guard. Dontrell probably move over to left guard or vice versa. And then you've got a lot of young talent that you're getting ready to kind of step in. I'm very surprised, and this takes me to kind of the next topic. More dogs are going into the portal.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, I'll be honest with you. Like, I expected Bo Hughley would explore transfer portal options. They're very easy to have a decision to make on going to the transfer portal. He's probably 4th on the list of offensive linemen, maybe further down, of guys that I thought would jump in, like Daniel Calhoun, Michael Looney, Jamal Merriweather. I thought were for sure going in. And they may still, but the fact that they haven't yet and classes are about to start is kind of odd. You know, like, I mean, I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but Georgia needs more players to enter the portal because they got to make this roster work. You know, there's still an 85 scholarship limit in the SEC. You know, you can go up to 115 per NCAA rules, but in the SEC, there's still a scholarship limit. I feel like more players are going to have to go in, you know, if Georgia's going to continue making transfer portal additions. And another thing I'll bring up too, there's some guys Georgia doesn't want to go in. And the fact that you've only seen one guy commit to Georgia from the transfer portal don't assume that that's all Georgia's in great shape for. They've got Khalil Barnes, which is a great addition, and I think it was really good to go ahead and get that one done, especially with visits to Ole Miss and other SEC schools.
And I think key in that one, and this is probably where you're headed, so apologies for cutting you off, but I think that's a position that's not necessarily going to, as I said earlier, upset the apple cart.
Yeah, because they've, you
knew that was a need. You knew that safety was a place they were going to go this offseason.
Yeah, that one was out there for sure.
Yep.
And I don't think you're forcing anybody into the portal by doing that. But don't be alarmed. More players are going to go in. Georgia's not done. I think they're up to 9. I think players have entered the portal. If I'm not mistaken, it's somewhere around 9 or 10, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there. Jonel Aguero goes in yesterday. I think that was a Jamon Dumas-Johnson type situation where he was probably going to come back and play a lot of snaps for Georgia, but it was probably going to be he might not have started every game that he was healthy.
Right.
And then you get into pre-draft stuff. You're having to answer questions from scouts and GMs like, hey, why did you lose your starting job? Why did your snap count go down? All of this stuff. And you got to answer that, and that can kind of hurt your draft stock a little bit. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I'm with you in terms of believing that there's a lot more going on under the surface. I'll say this openly. There's a lot of buzz that we have heard that points to other additions, not publicly.
Yeah. And I don't mind saying one, Isaiah Canyon out of Georgia Tech. I think Isaiah Canyon is very much. I'll be pretty surprised at this point if Georgia doesn't land him.
Sure.
I'll be surprised there. I think Georgia's probably got some stuff working behind the scenes for some more transfer portal additions that aren't public yet. And I think they probably feel pretty good about it. Hey, let's close this thing up and pick this college football playoff semifinal. Do you know who's playing?
I do, actually. I will tell you this. I spent like all day yesterday being like, okay, so it's these guys here and these guys here.
Yeah.
Like, putting together like the combinations was tough. But the way I remembered it was that Georgia was going to have to face Carson Beck, so that means Ole Miss is facing Carson Beck.
That's right. That's a weird matchup because Trinidad Chambliss is the guy. Like he's a beast, but Miami can get after the quarterback.
I was gonna say it's hard. That's a really hard one to gauge because I think that this game is going to look so different from the game that Georgia played against Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's strength on strength in a lot of ways. Like they've got a great pass rush. They play great defense. On the other side of it, are they going to grind Ole Miss in the dust with that run game? Because that's Carson Beck has attempted, and I know there was a big wind in the game in College Station, but Carson Beck's attempted like 46 passes in the playoffs, 43, 46, somewhere in there. And he's got like 240 yards passing. Like he's averaging like 5 an attempt, which is not very good. He hasn't played all that great in the playoff, but they haven't needed him to because that run game's been so good.
Right.
So, will Miami be able to come out there and commit to the run, or will Ole Miss be able to, outside of one drive and a few other plays, be able to play the run like it did against Georgia? If it comes out and plays great run defense, I think Ole Miss wins this game. But the matchup is fire versus fire in a lot of ways. I don't know the point spread on it, but
I was going to look that up real quick.
Straight up, I think Trinidad Chambliss is awesome. And I got to go with the team that has the great quarterback. And I would say Ole Miss.
Geez. Like I said, my concern there is just that it's going to be such a different game. I'll say this, Jake. I don't think Trinidad Chambliss is going to do to Miami what he did to Georgia, because I think that Miami is going to be able to get to him and affect him in a lot larger way. He had a lot of time against Georgia.
Yeah, but the time that his best plays came when he didn't have time, and they did get pressure on him.
That's true.
He ran away from everybody and broke the defense down with time. And I don't know. He's a tough guy to get on the ground.
Yeah, no doubt.
Tulane got him on the ground a couple of times. Georgia couldn't. But maybe there's a different game plan there. I'm not sure.
All right, so your line on that game looks to be 3.
Who's favored?
The Miami.
Okay, the Miami's favored.
Yes, the Miami.
I'm still picking Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss. If Ole Miss can be slightly, just somewhat effective against the run, I think they can win that game. I also like Oregon in the rematch. I think Indiana's playing some great ball. Don't get me wrong, but Georgia was playing some great ball going into that rematch with Ole Miss. And, I think, it's the only game Oregon's lost this year. There's some parallels there. Not that that matters at all, but I like Oregon in the rematch.
It's so interesting. Against the spread, all 4 of these teams are 9-5, which is pretty wild to see.
This college football does this to us.
I'm going to quite frankly, Jake, I'm going to pick the exact opposite of you on both instances.
It's good. If you looked at my picks this year at DawgsHQ,
going against you is probably a sound move.
Is a good idea.
Yeah. No, I'm going to go against you on both. I think that I think Miami's defense is going to be problematic for Ole Miss. I think that I think that they similarly can grind it with the run game, and I think that that's going to work to their favor. And then on the flip side, man, Indiana, I'm coming from a place where I've probably bet against them like 3 times this year. Not actually bet against them, just picked against them. But I picked against them like 3 times. Obviously, they haven't stumbled along the way, and I think that they are just riding with a lot of wind at their back. And so I think that, Cignetti is you think he's the premier coach in college football. I'm not willing to go that far yet. But I think that this squad's going to be ready to play.
No more Kurt Cignetti hate on my end.
You're taking all that and devoting it to Drew Aller.
All my hate now. Listen, Kurt Cignetti did what he did last year, and it was hard to watch the way that they just kind of rolled over and let Brandon Walker over at Barstool used the perfect analogy. He just rolled over and let Ohio State and Notre Dame pet his belly.
Sure.
He hadn't done that this year. They've been a wagon, an absolute wagon, and I've been impressed with that. And I certainly think Indiana's got what it takes to win that game. The thing with Oregon is I think Oregon's got more NFL players on that roster.
I would agree.
And I think Oregon's significantly healthier than they were the first time they played Indiana.
I will say this though. God, there's something about Mendoza. And I was talking to a guy the other day and I said, he's a special player. I said, but he's kind of goofy. And he said, yeah, he's a cornball. And I was like, yeah. That's a good way to describe him. But there's something wholesome about that, and that's probably why he'll be the number 1 overall draft.
He's the man. It's fun to watch him. I mean, are his interviews a little cringy? Yeah, 100%. But I'll get over it.
Sure.
I'll get over that. He's football doesn't work out for him. He could probably do something like Joel Osteen's doing. He'd probably get him a little Joel Osteen thing. Probably make more money than he would as a football player too.
Yeah, you got to wonder too. And I think that it's a small consideration, certainly, but I do wonder. This is a familiar building that Dan Lanning will be heading back to. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Atlanta, the logistics of all of that. I
think that helps. He's not going to get himself in duress if he's got to use the bathroom too.
He knows where catering is. He knows where to go get the Chick-fil-A sandwiches.
He knows where to do that. I just think the rematch is hard. They got a lot of players. I don't know. I like Oregon.
I can see that one. That one to me though, very likely devolves into a shootout.
It could. Those 2 teams are good defensively, though. Those are 2 really good defensive football teams. But the first game had a tiny shootout element to it too. They scored some points in that first one.
I think both of them. I should say this:
the 20s.
I think both of those offenses, if it goes to that, are more than capable of surviving in a shootout.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially with Oregon being healthy.
Yep. Guys, we will be watching it all. We'll be talking about it over at DawgsHQ, breaking it down. Look, come over. Great time to be on the board. Insider notes hitting like every 3 hours, it feels like at this point. Things just taking off. The board is popping off. We've got a lot of great discussion over there at DawgsHQ. So come over, come hang out with us, get all the insight, all the info, and we will be back with you on Sunday night to talk about potentially some big additions in the transfer portal. Oh, and maybe on Sunday night we'll talk about all the mid-year enrollees too.
Yep, we'll get to them.
Cheers.